All right, everybody. Good evening now. It is indeed evening, and we've got more work to do. I've got a Pro Football Focus video to make now, and I've got another Pro Football Focus video to make later. So there's going to be a late evening video. But yeah, you guys know the drill. Every week after Seahawks games, we look at Pro Football Focus. We do this video for the offense. We do another video for the defense. Not necessarily to say that Pro Football Focus always gets it right, but they do have a lot of objective metrics that I think are valuable. And their grading is at least interesting, even if I don't think they always get it right. So we are going to take a look at what we got here. The offense, this is obviously the side of the ball where things went pretty well on Sunday. So I can tell you right now that we're going to mostly have good things to say here. Couldn't get the win, but we did have a pretty... I don't know if you'd call it historic day offensively, but a pretty great one. Be back in 60 seconds. Here's some Sleeper. All right, guys, let's take a minute so I can tell you guys about Sleeper. I'll tell you a little secret as well. It's more than just a platform for fantasy leagues. This year, millions of users have enjoyed playing fantasy sports on Sleeper, but there's so much more to it. You have live stats, real-time updates of all stats. You have a news feed with lightning-fast updates on players and teams, and a real-time chat where you can engage with other users about plays, performances, games, all kinds of stuff during the sports season. So download Sleeper, experience it for yourself, and don't forget to use my promo code SBN to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit, and pair that with their new promo that will give you a free $20 entry, no deposit needed. So you can use both of those promos. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states and going. So check out Sleeper today and use those promos. All right, welcome back, and let's dive in with the top line grades. Just get a feel for who the people at PFF thought had the best days for the Seahawks offense. Now, the guy in first place, there's really not going to be much to say. Derek Young 91, which is great. He did make a very good play. He did have one very good play in this game, but he was only on the field for 4 plays. Very small sample size, can't really take much away from it. AJ Barner is our top guy that actually played a meaningful number of snaps, and I mean, it was the best game of his career by every possible metric. Almost an 88 overall. Most of it his work as a receiver, but he was also a competent blocker. 70 run block grade. So we're going somewhere with AJ Barner here, and I felt like he was going to be good in the offseason. He may end up exceeding my expectations, and I think my expectations were a little more than most people's. So that's pretty sweet. K9, third place, 83.5. Basically just did his job in all regards. Did what he needed to do in all situations. Not much to say. He's playing really well right now. It's just not a ton of volume, but I think that K9 is doing his thing. Abe Lucas, big bounce back this week, and I thought watching that game that Abe Lucas played really well. It was the first time this year where I didn't notice him in any particularly negative light at any point in the game. And yeah, 81.3. Hard to beat that. So that's very encouraging. Some people were getting antsy about Lucas. Not necessarily me, but some people were getting a little bit antsy there. Cooper Kupp, really nice game as well, 80.7. He's obviously not what he used to be, but he's got gas in the tank, and that's all we needed. We needed some gas in the tank. We didn't need him to be a Triple Crown winner. Sam Darnold, he comes in here, and I know this might seem kind of low, but remember, this is Pro Football Focus. They do things a little bit differently. Sam Darnold is going to get docked a little bit for some of his turnover-worthy plays. I think they gave him 1. Personally, I feel like you could give him more than 1, but regardless, those plays are going to drag your grade down. The fact that he did have a turnover will pull his grade down at least a little bit. It's PFF is about consistency and efficiency. I feel like they don't give enough credit for just like monster explosive games where you go up and down the field over and over and over again. Yeah, you're going to make a couple mistakes when you're being asked to do that much. But that's why they come to that conclusion. Torrey Horton, really good, 78. We are going places with him. JSN had a penalty, and he had a drop. The only drop the Seahawks had in this game, and he still had a 76. If you're wondering why he's so low, that's why he had the drop in the penalty. Charles Cross, good stuff here. So our tackle tandem, pretty locked in. And then Elijah Arroyo, who didn't contribute statistically really in that game, 1 catch, 10 yards, graded well by PFF, mostly because he was a good run blocker. So anybody who thought that Elijah Arroyo was going to come in and be a good blocker but not be a part of the passing game, come collect your prize, I guess. That's that was not what I expected. And Eric Saubert also graded very well in limited snaps, but not nothing. 69.2. Pretty much all because of his blocking. So he is doing his job. I was a little worried about Saubert being the third tight end this year, but so far I think he's given you what a third tight end needs to give you. And that is the point where you start hitting the cliff, where you actually get into the players that Pro Football Focus thought were average to bad. So you got a couple guys here who basically didn't play. Mason Richmond played 1 snap. I didn't even notice it, but 60. Brady Russell played 2 snaps, 60. That doesn't mean anything. That's just kind of like the I have nothing to say marker. Zach Charbonnet, he got beat up on mostly because, and this is admittedly alarming, they did not like what he did on passing plays. And that's why Charbonnet's here, to be the third down back. That's his greatest skill. He also provides more power than Walker, sure, but he is here to be a good pass catcher out of the backfield and a blocker. And on this game, according to PFF, he was bad at both, especially the blocking. Jalen Sundell picked up a penalty that wiped away a pretty big play. And in general, they were not a fan of his blocking. 43.7 pass blocking, 55.1 run blocking. So not good there. Gray Zabel, they thought he was terrible. 44. Picked up a penalty, his first penalty of the year. And they, in general, thought he did not have an effective day blocking. Now, these are growing pains, but it is a little bit frustrating that he isn't improving. Now, you're not going to improve in a straight line, but by that same token, 44 is beyond bad. That's actually getting to the point where you are beyond replacement level, honestly. That's below replacement level, I think. Anthony Bradford, 0 with his pass protection grade. So how Sam Darnold did not get sacked once this whole game with pass protection grades like this from the entire interior, I don't know. I don't know if this is just a reflection of Vita Vea projecting a field of amazingness or something where he just makes everyone across the line from him within a 3-yard radius completely incompetent. But somehow, some way, it didn't really affect us that much. So Bradford really bad. Bobo, of course, because he barely played and he got a holding penalty. That'll do it. And, well, what do you want, right? What do you want? Milroe gets 1 play, fumbles, and hits the bench. You get what you deserve, I guess. All right, so that is the top line. Let's dive in a little bit deeper than that. First, just talking about Sam Darnold, to take a look at some of his stats. They gave him 2 big-time throws in this game, so he continues to pile those up. They did give him a turnover-worthy play. Only 1, though. I was surprised by that. I thought he might have had 2, because you had the Yaya Diaby, should have been a pick 6, and then you had, I think, a Zion McCollum close call on a pick 6. So he's flirting a little bit with a disaster here, but PFF isn't really punishing him for it quite yet. I think PFF has a pretty high standard for what constitutes a turnover-worthy play, and I guess that's okay. And, yeah, no sacks on 13 pressures, so you do see where the pressures are coming in. I personally didn't think it was that bad, but you can see that Darnold is doing a good job evading pressure, not allowing those pressures to turn into sacks. All right, so that's that. The passing chart for Sam Darnold, again, it's a thing of beauty. He's working every part of the field. He's hammering the short middle, of course. Unfortunately, that is where he had his interception, but other than that, he was fine. The short left, short right, pounding it, getting things done in the intermediate part of the field. Intermediate, he was, 6 for 8 for 72 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then he hits 3 shot plays down the field, down the sidelines, or at least outside the numbers. He's working every part of the field. Only one screen in this game, though, worth noting. And I think it was a bubble screen, but I'm not 100% sure. So there still seems to be a lack of confidence with our screen game. But we're going to need those screens. We need to take pressure off the offensive line with more screens. And we need to do them well. So at some point this season, sure would be nice. All right, that's the Darnold stuff. Looking at some receiver stuff, I like to look at this page here just to check in on JSN. And sure enough, he lined up in the slot on 8 snaps on Sunday compared to 28 snaps as a wide receiver. Cooper Kupp is mostly getting the slot snaps. So JSN continues this unreal tear of high-level play, playing outside his comfort zone. I understand that JSN didn't even play outside in college. He played slot, like, I want to say 85, 90% of the time in college. And I know he's not playing the true wide. I know it's kind of like a middle ground, but this is still not something that I think a lot of people expected when we drafted him. When we drafted him, I thought, oh, this is going to turn into maybe the best slot receiver in football. He's making a play for best receiver in football, period. And I don't think he is, but he is making a play for it. Like, I don't see how anybody could doubt that at this point. Okay, so that's really the only thing I like to look at there. The receiving versus coverage. Again, the thing that I look for here with JSN, I want to see him get matched up with a bunch of different players throughout the game, and that's exactly what we got here. He gets a couple targets against safeties. He gets a couple targets against linebackers and ends and all their different cornerbacks. He's testing every part of that team. So we're putting him on the move, we're putting him in different matchups, and we're allowing him to just go to work over and over again. This is the stuff that I appreciate. All right, rushing direction. This is very weird this week. This is a very weird one. The rushing by direction list. So let's tally this up here. So basically, we could not run the ball at all on the left side, and we almost gave up on it. 3 attempts, 4 yards, left end. 3 attempts, 5 yards, off left tackle. 1 attempt, 2 yards, left guard. So that's the gap between the left tackle and the left guard. Middle left, which is the gap between Zabel and Sundel. So it's the gap between the left guard and center. 2 attempts, 5 yards. So couldn't do anything on that side. But when you go over to the right side, you start hitting oil here. 1 attempt, 14 yards off right guard. So that's the gap between Bradford and Lucas. Off right tackle, pretty decent. 2 attempts, 12 yards. And then we just hammered that right end. 8 attempts, 80 yards. And it's not like it was one play that was a 60-yard run and everything else was whatever. No, the long carry we had to the right end was 31 yards, which is good, but it's not completely resetting the average to where it doesn't mean anything. Yeah, we were hitting it hard over on that right end. And looking at this, part of me kind of makes me wish we did it a little bit more. Seems like we had something. We felt it. But at a certain point, we felt like we had to abandon the run, and I completely sympathize with that. But I also have to say, you know, just because your defense can't stop anything doesn't necessarily mean you have to stop running it if the run game is working. And for Tampa Bay, the run wasn't working. They had to abandon it. They did. But I don't know if we needed to. Like, that's at least a discussion to be had, I think. But look at how imbalanced this is. And I don't know what's happening on the left side here. I don't know if you would call this an indictment on Cross and Zabel's run blocking. I don't get the sense that either guy is inept at run blocking, but the right side's better, which isn't surprising, but it's usually not going to be this much better. This is pretty radically out of control. Okay, offensive line, blocking. Let's start with the pass protection, which, again, I think was quite good. Now, PFF does punish a couple guys here, but let's try to understand exactly what they got here. So first of all, we had both of our tackles at the top of the list here. They did say Lucas gave up 1 pressure. They said Cross gave up 2, but they still gave both guys very high grades. Both guys really settling in. I mean, Cross has been settled in since week 1, basically, but getting some good stuff going on from those 2 guys in pass protection. We also had, of all things, Ken Walker up here. Now, don't get too excited. It's 1 rep. Like, do not think this is something that it isn't. But it is amusing to see Ken Walker 3rd on this list. And then you had Sawbert, who had 3 reps. And then a bunch of guys who also had 1 rep in pass protection. Doesn't really mean much. They didn't allow anything, but I would hope not. And here's where things get funny, right? Gray Zabel gets a terrible pass protection grade. By their own admission, though, 0 pressures allowed. Did not allow anything statistically. This is where PFF grading kind of divulges from PFF objective metrics. And obviously, they're looking for more than just the result of the play. They want to know the process of the play. But I do find it very interesting, and I'd be interested to know how they came to this conclusion that Zabel was this bad, because a 45.9 is really bad. That's like, you should be getting benched. And Sundell did even worse. And he did have the penalty, but the penalty was on a running play. He gave up nothing by their own admission. Now, he's a center. The standard is higher than just not allowing pressures. But 43.7 implies a level of incompetency that I think is hard to find in a game where you didn't allow any pressures. Now, look, I got nothing. I can't say much about Charbonnet. This is his job. He is a good blitz picker upper. He is a good pass protecting back. And he allowed 2 pressures on 6 reps. Unacceptable. So I get that. He deserves that. And Bradford, 4 pressures. So yeah, you're going to get heavily docked for that. 4 pressures as a right guard is untenable. But I would like to know how they got to this. Like, this is pretty stark for a couple guys that allowed 0 pressures. By the way, some of this is on Darnold, of course, but 0 hits, 0 sacks. Everything was just a hurry. I think that's really good. I think that's really encouraging, and I take a lot from that. Even if 9 pressures allowed isn't the greatest game ever, the fact that none of those pressures turned into something messy, that's something I'm gonna take with me for sure. Okay, run blocking, again, the main thing I like to look at here is just the zone versus gap split, and you can see decent amount more zone than gap, like 2-to-1 basically. The only guy who got graded really poorly in run blocking, by the way, was Zabel. Like, you can see that even Anthony Bradford does okay here, which is why he's not getting completely buried. For whatever reason, Zabel got completely punished with his run blocking, which I guess if you look at the running by direction, it kind of makes sense. I don't know. But I do know this video is over. I'll be seeing you guys soon. Another PFF videos coming out later. Go Hawks.